Good morning, Year 5. Hopefully you've watched the first fraction video. As usual, this is the longer video to explain the answers for today's questions. As I always say to you, it's really important that you watch this video to just be exposed to some different strategies that you might find a little bit more efficient. And if you remember what efficient means, it means doing something a bit faster, but in a way that you're not going to make mistakes. Okay, so these were the questions that you tackled. Right, the first one, an addition question. I set this because we need to keep practicing adding lots of numbers together, and you need to be trying to spot numbers that, so pairs of numbers that are quite easy to add together, again in a way that you're not going to make some mistakes. So as we always do, we make sure, that everything's lined up properly, the numbers match and so on, and then we get ready to calculate. I'm going to put the decimal point in straight away. And then, so I'm going to do, 6 add 4 is 10, 10 add 8 is 18, 18 add 2 is 20, so if I take that 2 away, I'm left with 5, so it's 25. Now, hopefully, you're shouting at your computer, and you'll say, Mrs. PA, you've got it wrong, because actually, when you look at how I've set mine out, it is okay. I've kind of things are not completely in the right sort of alignment, but I kind of have done that okay. Now, what you notice is when I was doing my checks at the beginning, I didn't really think about what I was saying. I go, everything matches, that's all fine. And hopefully you sat there and thought, no, hang on, Mrs. PA, that doesn't match. So that's fine. But I've put 67.6 instead of 68.6. So even though I would have done lots of maths, and I would have probably calculated accurately, my answer would have been wrong. I would have got nothing for it because I didn't check carefully enough. So when you're doing those checks, it's a little bit like people who edit and go, I'm done after 1 minute. If you're going to do those checks, if you're going to remember the things that you might make mistakes with, then make sure you're doing it properly. Okay, so thankfully I only did that part. Right, so I'm looking now for pairs of numbers. So I'm going to do 8 add 2 is 10. And then I'm going to add the 9, which is 19. I'm going to take 1 away from that to make it 20. So then add the 7, which will be 27. 27 add 3 is 30. So add 1 more is 31. Okay. Then I'm looking at these numbers now. And I'm thinking none of them add together that nicely other than 6 and 6. So 6 and 6 is 12. 12 add 3 is 15. 15 add 5 is 20, so then it becomes 29. So your answer should be 291.5. Right, let's move on. So we're looking at this and we think, right, subtraction. Hopefully you're getting into that frame of mind now of really studying the question before you're working out what you're going to do, because quite often they suggest that you need to do subtraction, but actually, when you look at the question, the part that's missing means that you don't need to do that at all. So we always talk about in school the bar model, and it's a really good thing to use just in case you're slightly confused about what to do. So I would say if you look at that question and you're not sure about what to do, I would draw a bar model and think, hang on, I start with a bigger number, I'm going to subtract that number and I'm left with that number. So I know that my answer that I'm trying to find is actually the biggest part. So it's sort of the total, it's the biggest number that is there. These two numbers together make that number, because if we've got that number and we take that away from it, we're left with this part. So actually all we needed to do was to add these two numbers together to tell us what that missing part is. So you can see I've lined it up nicely now. Everything does match, and I'm going to put the decimal point in. So 8 add 2 is 10. I'm going to carry over that 1 there. Then 6 and 6 is 12. Add 1 is 13. 4 and 1. Sorry, I should cross that off. 4 and 1 is 5. 5 and 5 is 10. 2 and 1 is 3. And there we go. Okay, so that's the answer, 1,303. Right, 900 multiplied by something equals 27. Now again, don't look at this and think, hang on, I'm multiplying numbers that are really big, I can't sort of possibly do that. Really look at those numbers and think there must be a connection. Mrs. PA wouldn't have set this if it was too tricky. So there must be a connection between these numbers. So what I'm looking at is 9 multiplied by something equals 27. If I divide this number and this number by 100, I'm left with 9 and 27. So 9 times 9 multiplied by 3 equals 27. So actually, I'm looking at my 900, my 2,700. Okay, I'm going to multiply them by 100 again and think about them in that way. 900 multiplied by 3 is 2,700. Okay, because we're looking at it, so you can think about it as 9 times 3. Oh, this is where I get really frustrated. Is 27. 90 times 3 is 270. And then 900 times 3 is 2,700. Okay, it's that connection between those numbers. So again, it's using something that you do know really clearly to help you work out something that you don't know. Okay, 2/5 of 35. Now this was what our fraction video was about this morning. It was literally, I think, 2 minutes long. Okay, it was just moving forward. At the beginning of the week, we've been trying to find a fifth of numbers or a third of numbers. Okay, so one part of them. So we're all the time dividing a number this week into equal parts. Okay, remember fractions have to be equal parts. So for this one, we need to first of all find out what 1/5 is. We're splitting 35 up into 5 equal parts, and we want to know how much 2 of them are together. So all we're doing really is 35 divided by 5. And again, everybody can do that. How many 5s are in 35? There are 7. So in each fifth, there are 7. There is 7. Okay, so all I need to do is to think, actually, if it was 1/5 of 35, the answer would be 7. But I'm now looking at 2/5 of 35. So 7 adds 7, so the answer is 14. Okay, brilliant. Right, we're over to the other side of the board now. So I'm thinking about 3/11ths add something equals 17/11ths. Now both these denominators match. Okay, so that would suggest to me, or that means, that all 3 of these fractions have the same denominator. So we know that the denominator is going to be 11. If this fraction had a different denominator, then this one would probably have a different denominator. Okay, so I'm just thinking, really, what do I add to 3 to make 17? So I can just do 17 subtract 3, which is 14. If I add those two together, I get 17 over 11. Now, if we're looking at that, oh no, we're doing this part. I was going to say you could also, for a bonus point, change that. So convert that into a mixed number. So 11 out of 11 would be 1 whole. Okay, I can only get one lot of 11 out of 11 out of 17. So then I've got 6 left over. That wasn't the question at all, but I'm just putting that there just in case anybody thought about it. Okay, now this one I would really hope that you would do it mentally. So for the last, I don't know how many weeks, and probably since you've been in year 5, I've been talking about the fact that when I do things mentally, I'm almost imagining that number line. I don't really see a number line, but I'm counting up between numbers. So what I would expect to see people doing is to be thinking about counting up from 369 to 400. Remember, the game Diffie is about finding the difference. So subtraction, you can just count up, okay? Quite often it's much easier to use your addition skills than your subtraction skills. So each jump I'm doing, I'm trying to jump to a number that is much easier to calculate from. So all I'm doing there is adding 1 to make that 370. I'm going to think about this as 70. And I know from 300, the next lot of 100 is 400. So I'm thinking, what do I add to that 70 to give me that next lot of 100? So 70, add 30, okay, gives you the next lot of 100. And I know that really clearly because 7 add 3 makes 10, and the numbers are just 10 times bigger. So the answer is 31. Again, you could have done it as a sum, but it definitely would have taken you longer. And the chances are you may have made a mistake with exchanging because you've got 0, 0 in the top number. So you'd have to exchange from the hundreds column. Okay, 125 multiplied by 4. This is one of the brilliant questions that I think there'll probably be about 5 different ways that people would have done this. So we've got 4 lots of 125. So you could have written 125, add 125, add 125, add 125. That is one way of doing it. Okay, you could have done it as a sum where you're multiplying it by 4. Okay, and then you're just doing short multiplication. That's absolutely fine. You could also do the mental sort of strategy that I'll be thinking about now, of when you're multiplying by 4, you can double and double again. Now, quite often you need to write something down, but when you look at this number, if you double this number, double the 100, okay, is 200, double 25 is 50, so double 125 is 250, and if I double that again, I get 500, so that is my answer. Another way I think people would have maybe thought about doing it is partitioning the number. So thinking about times each part of it by 4. So 5 lots of 4 or 4 lots of 5 is 20. Okay, 4 lots of 20. Remember, we've got to think about what each digit is worth. 4 lots of 20 is 80. And then 4 lots of 100 is 400. If you add them together, you get the same answer, 500. So again, there's lots of different ways of doing that. Right, I'm going to say that our code word today, before we move on, is going to be, I never decide this, so let me think, what would it be? What can I see? I'm sat in my dining room. I'm going to say that I'm working at the table. That's a completely boring word. So code word today is table. Hopefully you've hung in long enough to hear that word. Right, last one. This is our word problem. We're going to think about UDC. Okay, it's quite similar to the one that we did on Monday, but taking it a bit further. So I have a piece of wood that is 3 meters long. Okay, I'm going to underline anything that I think is important. Okay, it's 3 meters long. It doesn't matter whether it's wood or material, piece of string, doesn't matter. I cut it into 2 pieces. Okay, so my 3 meters is split up into 2 measurements. One piece is 120 centimeters long. How long is the other piece of wood? So again, very similar to the other day. So I'm going to break this up. Now, I'm thinking one of my issues is that I've got a measurement in meters, but when I'm looking at this, didn't underline that, sorry. When I'm looking at this, I've got a measurement in centimetres. So actually I'm going to change this straight away into centimetres so it's easier to calculate with. So we need to think about how many centimetres are in a metre. Yep, 100. So in 3 meters it would be 300. So this is the same as 300 centimetres. Now we've got both measurements in the same unit of measure, both in centimetres. So if I cut this wood in half of 300, okay, so half of each of the hundreds would be 50. So if I add 3 lots of 50 together, it's 150. So if I cut it in half, it would be 150, but actually I'm going to cut it in less than half because it's 120. So now I'm thinking I've got 120 here, so all I've got to do is take away 120 from 300, or like we talked about before, counting up. So if I add 80 to 120, I get 200, and then I've got to add another 100 to get to 300. So the other piece of wood measures 180 centimetres. Okay, so that is your answer for the first one. Now, the challenge is I want to cut the second piece of wood, so this is my second piece of wood, the answer I've just found, into 3 equal parts, okay? How long would each part be? So I'm thinking I've got 180 centimetres, okay? I want to cut it now, so I've got 3 equal parts, so that means I'm just dividing it by 3, okay? There's not one that is bigger than the others. They're all exactly the same. So I'm thinking about 180 divided by 3, and that will give me my answer. Okay, I should have practiced what I preach, and I should be underlining, 3 equal parts, and it's the last answer. So I know 18 divided by 3 is 6. So 180 divided by 3 is 60. Bonus point if you remember the centimetres. Okay, but 60 is your answer. Okay, so each of those 3 parts would be 60 centimetres long. Right, let me know how you got on, and I will see you this afternoon, if not before for a live tutorial, but this afternoon for our check-in at 2:30. Have a good day.